The Cocktail Guru presents Cocktail Commentary with Jeffrey Pogash. Sit back and enjoy the story of the Rob Roy cocktail.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Cocktail Commentary, a very special edition of Cocktail Commentary. Is there anything better than Scotch whiskey, sweet vermouth, and aromatic bitters? I don't know. Probably not. And things get even better when you mix the three together and add a Scotty along with it. Mr. McTavish here. Does this drink sound familiar to you? Well, if you like the Manhattan cocktail made with American rye, whiskey, or bourbon, you will probably like the cocktail I just described, known as the Rob Roy. Yes, a Scottish cocktail, and I have my Scotty here supporting me with that cocktail. Remember, just as spirits were originally created as medicines, cocktails, a mixture of spirits, sugar, water, and bitters, were created partly as a hangover cure and as a sort of wake-me-up drink in the morning. Back in the 19th century, cocktails were thought to clear the head, sweep the cobwebs and fog from the brain. And bitters were used to help digestion and to cure an upset stomach. But all of this begs the question, how and why did this particular cocktail known as the Rob Roy come about? Do you know, Mr. McTavish? Can you tell us? Well, that, my friends, is the rest of the story. The year was 1894, and the Broadway theater scene in New York City was thriving. The Taming of the Shrew, Napoleon Bonaparte, Gismonda, starring the legendary Sarah Bernhardt, who also directed the play, Miss Dynamite, On the Bowery, A Doll's House, and A Trip to Chinatown were just a few of the plays and shows being performed. In addition, there was an operetta in production called Rob Roy, based loosely on the Scottish outlaw who became a folk hero, Robert Roy MacGregor. He had flaming curly red hair, was a cattle dealer, and a champion of the common man, by taking from the rich and giving to the poor. He was the Robin Hood of Scotland. The operetta was the precursor of the musical comedy that we see today on Broadway. It began in France around 1850 and fell out of favor by the 1920s as musical comedies gained popularity. Some impresario decided that Rob Roy MacGregor would be a great subject for a Broadway production, and to publicize it, he asked a bartender at the prestigious luxury hotel, the Waldorf Astoria, to create a cocktail. And voila, that is how the Rob Roy was born. The bartender might have been Johnny Solondz, the most famous bartender at the Waldorf, who created the famous Bronx cocktail. But we don't seem to have a written record of precisely who it was. Do we, Mr. McTavish? Don't think so. That doesn't really matter, since we have a great drink that has become a classic in the annals of cocktail history. And here's how to make it. Tell me how to make it, Mr. McTavish. Okay, 2 ounces GLENMORANGIE single malt Scotch whiskey. Thank you. What comes next? 1 ounce sweet Italian vermouth. Antica formula is the one I usually use. 2 dashes Angostura Bitters. And 2 dashes orange bitters. Combine ingredients in a shaker, half filled with ice, stir until chilled, strain into a chilled coupe, garnish with a cherry or lemon twist. Harry Craddock, author of the Savoy Cocktail Book from the Savoy Hotel in London, suggests shaking this cocktail. The Waldorf Astoria recipe indicates stirring the drink. The Waldorf uses orange bitters in its recipe, but today most people will use Angostura bitters. The Rob Roy is a great way to show off the characteristics of a fine single malt Scotch whiskey. And now you know the rest of the story. Cheers. Delicious. Thank you, Mr. McTavish.